There is a castle on the Isle of Wight. It was built in 1539 by Henry VIII to defend England from French invasion. It still stands today, its stone walls facing the Solent, the narrow, wind-whipped strait that separates the island from the English mainland. But no army has defended this castle in more than a century. It now serves a different purpose. Inside its walls, in rooms that have witnessed 200 years of secret conversations, a very different kind of gate is being kept. Welcome to the Royal Yacht Squadron, the most exclusive sailing club in the world. The year is 1815. Napoleon has just been defeated at Waterloo. The British Empire is at the peak of its confidence. And at the Thatched House Tavern in St. James's, London, 42 gentlemen gather for a dinner that will change the history of sport. They are naval officers, aristocrats, and men of means, united by a single passion, the love of sailing. Not sailing as transportation, not sailing as commerce, sailing as a pursuit, a test of seamanship, nerve, and the ability to command a vessel in conditions that would terrify most men. They decide to form a club. They call it simply the Yacht Club. 5 years later, King George IV, the Prince Regent, who spent his life cultivating pleasure as a fine art, grants the club his royal patronage. It becomes the Royal Yacht Club, and in 1833, King William IV renames it the Royal Yacht Squadron, a name that deliberately evokes naval power. These are not men who sail for leisure. They are men who sail as a form of identity. To understand the Royal Yacht Squadron, to really understand it, you must understand what it means when an institution receives the prefix royal from a reigning British monarch. It is not a marketing designation. It is not a brand endorsement. It is a covenant. When George IV granted his patronage in 1820, he was not simply lending his name. He was saying, "This club, this gathering of sailors, is now an extension of the Crown's dignity." To be a member is to be, in some small but meaningful way, adjacent to the monarchy. The club's burgee, the triangular flag flown from every member's yacht, bears the St. George's Cross and a crown. When a Royal Yacht Squadron vessel enters a foreign port, protocol demands that the Royal Navy salute it. This is not a metaphor. This is maritime law. The squadron is not a club that happens to have a royal connection. The royal connection is the club. In 1858, the squadron acquired Cowes Castle, a stone fortress built by Henry VIII 3 centuries earlier. The choice of a castle as a clubhouse was not accidental. The members did not want a clubhouse. They wanted a citadel. Cowes Castle sits on the water's edge, its cannons, once aimed at French warships, now silent, pointing out across the Solent, where members' yachts ride at anchor. The castle's ramparts have been converted into a viewing platform from which members watch the racing. Its great rooms, once filled with soldiers and gunpowder, now house one of the finest collections of nautical art in the world. The castle is not merely the squadron's address. It is its symbol, a fortress, originally built to keep foreigners out, now performing exactly the same function. But socially, not militarily. The walls are the same. The gatekeeping is the same. Only the weapons have changed. How do you join the Royal Yacht Squadron? You do not. You are brought in. The process has remained essentially unchanged for 2 centuries. A current member, your proposer, must nominate you. A second member, your seconder, must support the nomination. Your name is then submitted to the membership committee, who investigate your character, your sailing experience, and, though no one will say this aloud, your suitability. Then comes the ballot. Members vote in secret. A single black ball, literally in the squadron's early history, a black marble dropped into a ballot box, is sufficient to reject a candidate. The origin of the phrase blackballed is not an abstraction here. It is a physical mechanism that has determined the social fate of ambitious men for 200 years. No explanation is given. No appeal is possible. The gate closes silently, and you are never told why. Membership is capped. The squadron intentionally limits its numbers, approximately 500 full members and a select group of naval members. When someone dies, a space opens. The waiting list is not published because there is no list. There is only patience and the right friends and time. The membership includes admirals, industrialists, members of European royal families, and a carefully curated selection of individuals whose yachts are large enough and whose sailing credentials are deep enough to meet the squadron's exacting standards. The annual subscription fee is, by the standards of elite clubs, modest, a few £1,000s. But the fee is not the filter. The filter is everything that must be true about you before you are ever invited to pay it. Members of the Royal Yacht Squadron wear a uniform, not a blazer with a crest. An actual naval-style uniform, complete with gold braid, brass buttons, and a cap. The uniform is modeled on that of a Royal Navy officer, and wearing it is not optional at formal squadron events. To an outsider, this might seem theatrical, cosplay for rich men who never served. But that misses the point entirely. The uniform is a signal. It says, "We are not civilians playing at boats. We are officers of a fleet, not a military fleet, but a social one." The uniform collapses the distance between the Royal Navy and the Royal Yacht Squadron, between military power and social power, between the men who command warships and the men who command capital. In both worlds, the uniform serves the same function. It tells you instantly who belongs and who does not. Every August, the town of Cowes transforms. The population swells from 10,000 to over 100,000. The harbour fills with vessels ranging from modest day sailors to super yachts, the length of football pitches. This is Cowes Week, the oldest and largest sailing regatta in the world, running continuously since 1826. The Royal Yacht Squadron is the spiritual and organizational center of Cowes Week. Its cannon, the same cannon that once defended England, now fires the starting signal for each race. The squadron's platform, a waterfront terrace reserved for members and their guests, is the most coveted viewing position on the entire Solent. Cowes Week is not merely a sporting event. It is a social convergence. The moment each year when the global sailing aristocracy descends on a small island off the English coast to race, to be seen, and to conduct the kind of conversations that happen nowhere else. In 1851, the Royal Yacht Squadron made a decision that would change the history of sport forever. It commissioned a single trophy, a silver ewer crafted by the royal jeweller Gerard, worth £100, and offered it as the prize for a race around the Isle of Wight. The challenge was open to any yacht in the world. A single American schooner answered the call. Her name was America, a sleek, radical design from the New York Yacht Club, built by a young shipwright named George Steers. On August 20, 1851, with Queen Victoria watching from the royal yacht, America crossed the finish line first, more than 20 minutes ahead of the fastest British yachts. Legend holds that when the Queen asked who was second, the reply came, "Your Majesty, there is no second." The squadron had lost the trophy it had commissioned, and in losing it, it had inadvertently created the most famous prize in the history of sport, the America's Cup, named not for the country, but for the boat that took it. The oldest international sporting trophy in the world exists because the Royal Yacht Squadron was defeated, a loss that became a legacy. Let us measure the arc of this institution across 2 centuries. In 1815, at the Thatched House Tavern, 42 gentlemen form the Yacht Club. 5 years later, George IV grants his royal patronage. In 1833, William IV renames it the Royal Yacht Squadron, a deliberate assertion of naval character. In 1851, the squadron commissions the America's Cup, the oldest trophy in international sport. In 1858, Cowes Castle becomes the permanent clubhouse. Cowes Week, running since 1826, becomes the premier event on the global sailing calendar. Today, the Royal Yacht Squadron remains exactly what it has always been, a closed world, governed by rules that are not written down, accessible only through relationships that cannot be forced. 2 centuries, 6 British monarchs, 2 world wars, the fall of the British Empire, and the squadron has adapted to none of it because it never needed to. The tide rises and falls. The castle remains. Why does the Royal Yacht Squadron still matter? Not because of its members, though they are impressive. Not because of its history, though it is unmatched. It matters because it is a living demonstration of something we have seen before in this series and will see again. The way certain institutions function, not by keeping you out with locks and guards, but by making the gate itself invisible. You can sail past Cowes Castle any day of the week. You can photograph it from the water. You can read its history in books. But you cannot enter, not unless someone inside has already decided you belong there. The squadron does not advertise. It does not recruit. It does not explain itself. It simply exists, century after century, as a monument to the proposition that the most effective form of exclusion is the one that requires no enforcement. The castle does not need a moat. The ballot box is enough. The Royal Yacht Squadron taught the world something it has never forgotten, that the most exclusive places are not the ones with the highest walls, but the ones where you do not even know whom to ask. We are building something here, one world at a time, one gate at a time. The tide rises and falls. The conversation continues. Membership is capped. The squadron intentionally limits its numbers, approximately 500 full members and a select group of naval members. When someone dies, a space opens. The waiting list is not published because there is no list. There is only patience and the right friends and time. The membership includes admirals, industrialists, members of European royal families, and a carefully curated selection of individuals whose yachts are large enough and whose sailing credentials are deep enough to meet the squadron's exacting standards. The annual subscription fee is, by the standards of elite clubs, modest, a few £1,000s. But the fee is not the filter. The filter is everything that must be true about you before you are ever invited to pay it.